Hello, and welcome to Books in the World. I'm your host, Kathleen Murphy. Books in the World is an interview show produced by the Cape Cod Writers Center and the Cape Media Center. The Writers Center was established over 6 decades ago and sponsors a 4-day writers conference every summer on Cape Cod. The goal of Books in the World is to show how writers, illustrators, publishers, editors, and others in the literary field play their roles in the world of books and other communication media. This show has been broadcast continuously since 1978, making it the longest-running program of its kind in the United States. Today we are delighted to welcome Roger A. Smith, author of The Conductor, Book 1 of Rian Krieger's Journey. Welcome, Roger.
Good to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Roger began his working life as a high school history teacher. A decade later, his career transitions included co-owning a summer camp, founding a participatory science museum, co-owning a wilderness expedition program, and teaching entrepreneurship to college students. He also lived and worked on a farm in central Pennsylvania for 41 years. His background, along with his passion for inspiring and creating, are all evident in his debut novel. Fast-paced and full of vivid characters, The Conductor is set in antebellum Philadelphia. I think readers will fall in love with his main character, Rian. And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to talk to such a talented writer.
Oh, well, thank you very much. You're
so
very generous.
Again. Yeah, no
it's
worries.
Good to be here.
Great to have you here. So let's talk about the book. Tell me the story, tell me the plot of the book, please.
Okay. Rian Krieger, who you mentioned, is an 11-year-old tomboy. She is half Irish and half German, which creates its own internal conflict within her. At that time in Philadelphia, the Irish and the Germans didn't get along with each other, but nobody got along with one another. As a matter of fact, the first day of the book is the setting for the general strike of 1835, in which 20,000 workers walked out of the job and marched in the streets with banners, and the banners campaigned for working a 10-hour day, 6 days a week. So they were hoping to be able to get a 60-hour work week, sun to sun. So during the long hours of summer, they would work 14 hours a day and then often get laid off during the short hours because you had to light the factories with something, and that was more difficult. And so there was a bunch of reasons. And the port of Philadelphia iced up during the wintertime, so there was nothing happening anyway.
So Rian is in this setting. She's
Rian.
11.
Yep.
Rian.
No worries.
I'm going to get that right.
You will.
Rian is in this setting. She's 11 years old. She is the daughter of
Otto Krieger, who is a carriage maker, but he's dabbling with the idea of maybe I'm going to get into the railroad business. The railroads are just brand new. I mean, in 1835, we're literally talking about 3 or 4 years. It seems like a new thing, and maybe I've got the skill set. It just would be a minor tweak to go up. So he's making that transition. Meanwhile, Rian is trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do here? Because she's been kicked out of her 3rd school for fighting. She's gone to German school, she's gone to Catholic school, and now she's gone to public school. And so Otto's out of options, so he says, okay, you're going to come and stay with me in my factory, and you can learn bookkeeping in the morning, maybe you can learn pattern making or something in the afternoon, which will help you with math, or wherever we're sending these carriages to, then that's a geography lesson. So he's got all these plans, but Rian starts hanging out with the wrong element and learns things that Otto doesn't really think is going to happen, and therefore she becomes involved in the Underground Railroad, which is a major theme of the book.
Okay, well, before we get to that, so again, 11 years old, her mother died just 3 years previous.
Yes, the cholera pandemic, which wasn't used at that time, but it was a pandemic. It started in India, went to Russia, through Poland, France, Great Britain, into Canada, through Detroit, back to the East Coast, and wiped out a significant portion of the population of Philadelphia. I'm talking about 10%.
Wow.
During that time. So it was a pandemic, but we just didn't use it.
Yeah. I love that you know that.
Yeah.
So her mother passes away, and so Ryan is the only child. Her father is working all the time
Yep.
in the shop.
Right.
She's now going to start joining him in the shop.
Yes.
And during her growing up period now, so this book is going to cover 2 years.
Right.
And it's going to focus on her trying to keep wearing her shop clothes.
Right.
And, you know, dressing like a boy.
Right.
In antebellum, Pennsylvania. And she's learning or being educated by her uncles, the people at the work, at the shop factory, right? And through this, she's going to end up meeting a lot of characters, and we're not really sure what's going to happen to her. If she's going to get like sent off to Switzerland to an all-girls school, or what's going to happen. So the plot for the first book is really about how is Rhian going to get through this year, kind of trying to keep her dad happy, even though he doesn't want her to dress like a boy, and he's not keen on the idea of her hanging out at the shop all the time just yet.
Right.
Okay. So her uncles defend her, her uncles are gonna, you know, stand up for her somewhat. Okay. So there's several threads that go through this. And before I start on the threads that go through this, how did you come up with this idea? How did you become, you know, you have an education, an education background. You work with a lot of young adults. Was that a contributing factor? How did you come up with this idea?
I used to be the director of a countywide arts organization. I did that for 9 years. It was my last gig for a paycheck. And one of the things that we created on my watch was something called a novel idea, in which we had published authors come and give a once-a-month presentation about dialogue or believable villains or the first 5 pages, whatever it was. And we did this for so many years that we had a bunch of graduates, and we went to a novel idea 102, which was the business side of novel writing. And I was approached by a local newspaper publisher who said he wanted to create a serial novel where you write the first 10,000 pages and I write the next, and on and on and on. So I was there at the organizational meeting of our graduates and faculty members, and they started talking about, okay, when's this novel going to take place? How about antebellum period? In Newport, Pennsylvania, where I lived, central Pennsylvania. And they started talking about their characters. And I was chairing the meeting. I had no intention of doing any writing. I was a year away from retirement. I was going to be a woodworker. You know, that was going to be my passion. And I started thinking about characters, and I thought, geez, you know, I've got some good idea for characters, but I'll be damned if I'm going to share them with anybody. So I just, almost as an intellectual exercise, started writing, and within a couple of months I had my first book, which is now books 4 and 5.
Wow. So just for the audience, this is the first book of what is going to be 9. 9 books.
Yes.
And we're going to follow Rhian's journey through antebellum.
Metaphorical and physical journey.
Right.
Rhian is going to be peripatetic. She'll be in Philadelphia, book 2, which is at the publishers now. She runs away to Russia. She comes back to Philadelphia. She runs to Newport, where I lived.
Wow.
Then to St. Louis. Then she's a 49er.
Okay.
On and on. So
Okay,
it keeps on going. It takes on the major themes of American history.
Okay, fantastic. I love that. But before we go all the way through all 9
far
books,
ahead, yes.
let's stick with the one that we have in.
Right.
Let's start with your first
Okay.
one, because people need to read this book
Sure.
to start, right? So again, there's threads that are running through this, and
Yes.
one of the threads that's most prominent is the abolitionists.
Sure.
And that the Underground Railroad is going to be an element in this, and Rhian is going to get involved with this. So tell us about that.
Well, I've created an ensemble of characters, some fictional, some real. Lucretia Mott, for instance, is the next door neighbor. She lived at 136 North 9th Street in Philadelphia. Lucretia, when I was teaching high school, I taught about her during Women's History Month, by the way. Women only got a month during that time.
What is up with that?
Hopefully those
We
things
need well
are
more than a
changing,
month.
I believe. Lucretia was a women's rights advocate, the way I taught it. And when I finally got to Philadelphia and started doing all this research, I realized, holy mackerel, this woman was an amazing advocate, an anti-slavery advocate, and put her money where her mouth is. She created a movement called the Free Produce Movement, in which she only bought products that were created without slave labor. So think about it. You had to source out cotton, sugar, molasses, that were things like that that were not tainted by slavery, or go without. So she would switch to more expensive products like linen and so on.
Yeah.
And it was difficult. The free produce movement really never got any traction. It's kind of like the organic movement these days that, hey, it's more expensive. I can get this thing over here, so maybe I won't do it. So anyway, Lucretia was a star, but also in my ensemble, the factory foreman is a guy by the name of Jules Freeman. He is an escaped, formerly enslaved individual. He ran away from Maryland. If he gets caught on the without his forged emancipation paper, then he can get returned to slavery. But he speaks the King's English. He's Otto's best friend for very logical reasons. He actually saved Otto's life the very first day that Otto was in Philadelphia. So there's a ton of background to this and backstory to all of this. But Jules is a station master in the Underground Railroad. I'd like to just kind of backtrack for a moment. When I was teaching high school, when I was teaching about the anti-slavery movement and abolition and the Underground Railroad, all I ever talked about was white people. That was the curriculum. And the more I did the research, the more I realized, yeah, sure, white people were involved, but the station masters and the conductors, they were African Americans. They were people mission-driven to help their brethren.
Yeah, because you're not going to leave where you are as a slave and just go, for instance, with a white person and disappear, because you're not really sure. There's a trust level.
Sure.
So here they are.
Right.
Of course they're going to be the ones that are on the ground working with people, their fellow people.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it
anyway,
makes perfect sense, and it's a shame.
All these folks who were marginalized and shoved to the side of American history, I'm trying to bring back into the light. And hopefully what I'm describing will have a ring of truth to it.
Yeah, exactly. And you not only highlight the Underground Railroad, you also highlight in the city of brotherly love that there were very wealthy people that happened to be black, and they ran businesses and they were successful, and they had, a great history that has not been written about. So kudos to you for bringing that out.
Thank you very much, and they're marvelous characters. James Fortin was actually a Revolutionary War hero. He was captured. He was the kid who took the black powder to the cannons on a ship back and forth, and his ship was captured. He had the option of being freed and taken to England, or to spend his life in a prison ship in New York City Harbor, and he took the prison ship. He walked back to Philadelphia after he was freed, barefoot, and apprenticed himself to a sailmaker. He bought the sailmaking business and became one of the most prosperous men in Philadelphia, black or white.
Yeah, and a wonderful character in your book.
Great character.
So along with the abolitionist thread that runs through it, one of the things that I thought was really interesting too was science and industry were changing so much in that time. And it affected these people. It affects Otto, it affects Rian, it affects the shop, it affects a lot of the citizens in Philadelphia, especially because it's an industrial city and it's growing. So can you give us an example of some of the technology
it was
that they're...
not just technological, but it was societal as well.
Yeah.
But we make the transition from foot and horsepower, where over the course of a day, you're going to only be able to do 4 miles an hour. Canal boats changed that, and they could go all night long because they would switch out the mules or the horses. It shortened the Pennsylvania Canal, shortened the travel time from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh from 14 to 4 days, which is incredible.
Awesome.
If you can imagine that sort of thing. It just makes it pretty much doable.
Yeah.
But communication, for instance, once again, communication can only travel at the rate of 4 miles an hour, except that there were towers built from the mouth of the Delaware to Philadelphia, and they would wave what they called semaphores back and forth so a message could travel in 15 minutes, and that was 85 miles. The merchants loved that because they would have a whole day's worth of advance notice. So if they have a vat full of whale oil sitting there that's very expensive, they can dump it knowing the new batch is coming in.
It's coming in, exactly.
So, but that innovation, this is beyond my book, but Samuel F.B. Morse invented the telegraph, which revolutionized the whole thing all over again. So wave after wave after wave of technology is coming by and changing life. And I want to just switch very quickly. I mentioned societal. The cordwainer was a guildsman. He would create shoes, and he had status. He had income. He had just a trade that he was proud of. And within the course of 20 years, shoe factories put him out of business, and he became a wage earner. He didn't set his own hours. He didn't have status. He couldn't meet his monthly payments. So there was just so much turmoil in Philadelphia at this time, as well as worldwide. But this is the microcosm.
Change,
yes.
Tumultuous change.
Tumultuous.
And your characters are really showing how it's done.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You did so much research on this. You had a lot of research. You were reading excerpts, you were reading letters, you weren't reading letters. Tell me about that. Yeah.
My idea of a really bad time is reading letters from the era, that the gems are so few and far between. The language is arcane. I can't read the handwriting. It's very difficult. But there are people who love to do that at the granular level, and they consolidate and give me the gems. And there have been more than one occasion that I've said, oh wow, I do need to go back and read that letter because that's very important. But for the most part, I'm very happy to have somebody else looking at the primary source and then feed me the information. I've acquired so many books that I had to build my own bookcase in order to hold all these things.
And being a woodworker, that was a good thing.
It was a joy. Yes,
exactly.
That was my afternoon. So it was all fun. But there have also been so many books that have been written within the last 20 years or so that have pretty much fed my own internal bias about where I want this whole narrative to go. And it's been just a joy. And I've actually made contact with some of these folks, and they've also started to feed me more information, which is terrific.
Good.
But I also am a fan of the internet. I give my money to
Wikipedia
every month, just because I use them for all sorts of different stuff, from the sublime to the ridiculous. But it just is a huge time saver.
I love the internet. I love the internet for looking up stuff. It's fantastic. I also loved in your book how you put the words to explain complex things like the politics of the fire brigade or steam engines and the inner workings of it. You put it into dialogue between Rian and her father or her uncle or her cousin, and it's a great way to demonstrate, it makes it so much easier for a reader. Did you have that in mind when you did this?
Yeah, I learned that a long time ago. Even high school years, where I was reading novels where there was always the new kid who was having stuff explained to him, and that made the reader not feel so dumb. I have no idea what's going on here, but this guy doesn't either, and this old guy is explaining it to him, so it works out. And that's what I tried to inculcate. It's a ton of fun and takes a lot of revisions because the first time is really kind of clunky, but you keep on doing it and it comes out very nice.
And you work at this. This is a job for you. I mean, you're going to get up to 9 books with this. So I think you shared with me once that you're up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And you're working for as many hours as you can stand.
Right, till I run out of gas.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's usually till the dog wakes up and tells me it's time to go out. I've got a Great Dane, so that's usually 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. But the one trick that I learned is that if I've written this much in the morning, I can go and do other things, maybe market, maybe woodwork, maybe do something else in the afternoon. The last thing I do before I go to bed is read what I read or what I wrote in the morning, and my little brain is just
It's working on it overnight.
absolutely.
Yeah. So when you wake up in the morning,
I'm already thinking about it, and sometimes the nut has been cracked.
I can tell that because the way that you'll speak from the perspective of Jules, or you'll speak from the perspective of the father, or obviously from Rian, is who you speak from a lot. And there's a lovely continuity to the story as you move from one incident to another, and Rian discovering her world and trying to maneuver through her world, navigate through her world. So I can see that, and it's well written for that
thank you.
reason. Yeah,
Thank you, that's great.
It's got a lot of wonderful historical gems in it, and then it's got this compelling story about Rian. So I love that. Can I ask who the book is dedicated to? Is a couple of women named Linda and Gloria.
Linda and Gloria Bailey Davies, I met at the First Parish Brewster Unitarian Universalist Church, and they were one of the couples that were plaintiffs in the marriage equality case in Massachusetts, which you may or may not know was the first in the nation to provide marriage equality for gay and lesbian individuals. Right. So they were just normal people. Were under the radar, and were kind of talked into doing this by a couple of folks who had dreams of marriage equality in Massachusetts.
Right. And so they were thrust into the spotlight.
Yes, reluctantly thrust to the point of appearing on the Today Show and things like this, and the case was the first in the nation. Massachusetts was the first in the nation to guarantee marriage equality, and now it's obviously law of the land. So there we have it.
I love that
for now.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's the dedication for the book. So
Yeah, they're
lovely.
real heroes. Story is you're not supposed to meet your heroes, but I met them before I knew they were heroes, and that made a difference.
I love that. That's fantastic. Very, very good. So you have Lucretia Mott in this story.
Another hero.
Another hero. And you use her to bring in other famous people.
Absolutely. She's the hub of the wheel.
Yeah.
Because of Lucretia, and because Otto and Rian are next door neighbors to Lucretia, we do meet John Quincy Adams, Benjamin Lundy, John Greenleaf Whittier, William Lloyd Garrison, all these folks who have a horizon that is beyond Philadelphia. Right. One of the things that I try to bring out that you alluded to is these people are well traveled. They go to Europe, they come back, they travel throughout the United States, they get stoned in Boston, or it's quite remarkable how peripatetic these folks are.
Yeah.
And therefore, it allows me every once in a while to get beyond Philadelphia before we come back.
Yeah, which is fabulous. So this book was published in 2022.
Yes.
Your next book, as I understand, is, you just said you just hit send?
I hit send about 3 weeks ago, and so hopefully the first quarter of 2023, I was working on book 3 this morning. I've got 90,000 words written in that, as well as the same for book 4 and book 5. So I'm now literally writing maybe 20 scenes in each of those before They go off to the developmental editors, and from there to the copy editor, and then back to Sunbury Press.
Fantastic. And to learn about this and keep up with your progress and learn your experience as a debut novelist, the experiences that you've had, the writing groups that you've gone to, reading groups that you've gone to. So your website is?
RogerASmith.com, R-O-G-E-R, RogerASmith.com.
So easy to find?
Yep, write
Very
me a
good.
note, you'll be on my list.
Yeah, that's excellent. Good. So we'll look for that.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming in
It's been
and
a
talking with
pleasure.
us today. Yeah, this is fabulous.
What a good time. We're
So
good.
again, thank you for being on the show.
It's been
I
my pleasure.
appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this show and would like to see more, you'll find links to them through our website, CapeCodWritersCenter.org, through our Facebook page, and on YouTube. Thank you for watching Books in the World.